Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard got her breakout moment in the second Democratic debate when she verbally took down Kamala Harris's campaign in all of 15 seconds. We asked her in our exclusive interview yesterday her thoughts on frontrunner Senator Elizabeth Warren. Take a listen to what she said.
I haven't seen much come from her in the way of what kind of leadership and decision-making that she would bring to that most important responsibility that the president has as commander-in-chief, and just as a soldier and an American, that's very concerning for me. So, you know, for voters, I think that's an important thing to look out for from everyone who's running for president, is what kind of experience do you have in this area? What kind of depth and understanding do you bring to these very nuanced and complex issues with how the United States is relating with other countries? What kind of leadership we're providing in the world, and having the kind of foresight and judgment that we've seen leaders from across both party lines have lacked for far too long.
It's a question we wanted to bring to Team Rising. Has Elizabeth Warren made a strong case to be commander-in-chief, and have any of the other 2020 candidates, frankly?
Stephen Cobb is here. He's the former Deputy Attorney General of Virginia, Obama administration appointee, and Tom Rogan is a commentary writer for the Washington Examiner.
Two friends
Welcome
of the show.
back to
Gentlemen,
you both.
great to see you both.
Thanks for having us.
I mean, Tom, let's start with you. I know you write often about defense over at the Examiner. I thought Tulsi Gabbard's criticism was, I mean, it's a preview of what possibly is to
coming
come
in the
that
debate.
But
Get
two,
ready.
what have you seen in Elizabeth Warren's record on to possibly be commander-in-chief? She is one of these run-of-the-mill domestic political experts who is running for that office. Has that worked out in our past? How does it generally? What do you think?
Well, I think her primary advantage is being able to grab hold of this mantle in terms of the trade policy issue that President Trump was able to use very successfully in 2016. So there's an opportunity for her there that could potentially win independence. I think on the broader national security portfolio, there are a couple of concerns in the sense that she is slightly sort of squishy in terms of what she would do with the military spending, nuclear policy. That becomes relevant in terms of the Chinese and Russians both pushing very aggressively, especially the Chinese on long-range missiles, hypersonic vehicles. So that's something she's going to have to address. But you know, we're at an early stage, and because domestic policy has been so forefront in terms of the Democratic debate so far, she has an opportunity to define that as she sees fit going forward. So she's got a lot of room there to sort of meld to what she wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like so far, we honestly don't know all that much, right? She's been sort of run-of-the-mill, standard Democrat on these issues. It certainly hasn't been an area of leadership for her. One area that Sanders supporters point to as a distinction with Bernie is that she voted for a big Trump military budget that he voted against. Do you think those sorts of things are significant? What do we know about her as potential commander-in-chief?
You know, I think right now people are still focusing primarily on those domestic policy issues, and that's why you see that taking so much of that debate time. That's what they're focusing on the stump. And so really when those foreign policy and military policy areas come up, they tend to be focused around something specific that happens. And so I think the real test will be, you know, what happens over the next year to help, that defines that conversation. But I think one of the things that all the Democrats are doing in 2020 is talking about what it means to be a leader going forward for the United States, and what it means to reset with our allies, particularly in Europe, which we have seen really poor relations through the Trump administration, and being able to reset and just saying the simple lines of, we're going to be able to work together, we're going to be there with you shoulder to shoulder, we're going to have a dialogue, it's not going to be our way or the highway. And you see those that kind of theme resonating with many of the primary voters.
That is what I find interesting in this debate. I asked Tulsi Gabbard yesterday, I said, are you a nationalist? She said she wouldn't go there, but you know, she does talk a lot like a nationalist when it comes to foreign policy.
She said the word had different
it
connotations,
has different connotations depending on what you want. However, I do think it's interesting, really, which is you got Joe Biden that really is the kind of like double down on NATO, European alliance, TPP, very traditional Obama foreign policy that we've seen for quite a long time. Which of the other candidates, Tom, fall within that view? And are there any other than Tulsi that fall out of it? That's what I think is interesting.
Well, I mean, again, I think with Elizabeth Warren, we're not quite sure at the moment. But I mean, Kamala Harris has, I think she's been weak on nuclear weapons, which again, I don't want to overemphasize, but that is really important in terms of evolving Chinese and Russian doctrine.
Absolutely.
Joe Biden has that mantle of experience, which is obviously a great opportunity for him. Pete Buttigieg, I think, comes into that more sort of traditional vein.
Yep.
But again, I would say that the real takeaway so far is Elizabeth Warren being on that sort of trade position, more skeptical, the idea of a national industrial policy that President Trump has embraced. So it'll be interesting to see how Biden and her go at it, being the two, it seems, at the moment.
Well, the other thing for me,
Stephen,
the other thing for me, Stephen, though, is I think you rightly point out, a lot of voters are focused on home, they're focused on domestic policy, et cetera. But meanwhile, we've got the Afghanistan war still going on. We have a big question mark around Syria. We have escalating tensions with Iran. We have scary stuff going on with North Korea. I mean, these issues of war and peace and life or death are really central, and they are also the area in which the president has the most control.
Unilateral authority.
Right, exactly. Unilateral authority. So isn't it on the debate moderators, isn't it on the press to get us more information about what these candidates would actually do if they were commander-in-chief?
It's an incredibly important conversation to have. And for some of these folks who have lived their entire lives focused on domestic policy, you can see the learning curve and the level of comfort they have in speaking on these issues.
Yeah.
But not just because voters have the right to know where people stand, but also the refinement of the positions only happens during those conversations. To be challenged on a particular point, how will you act in this situation? How will you act in that situation? Let's talk about military spending. Let's talk about budgets, and you get a better dialogue and you get better policy through that level of discussion. So I think it is an important area, and I think you'll see it as we get closer to those.
And I think what we could say at this point, and it's interesting because last time Senator Sanders ran, one of the knocks on him was that he hadn't fully fleshed out a foreign policy vision and what that looks like. This time, I think you'd have to say he and Tulsi Gabbard on one side, and then Joe Biden as like the more traditional view on the other side, are the three where you actually can see some sort of a philosophy around what they would do. Gabbard and Sanders, obviously kind of a break with the normal bipartisan consensus, and Biden a return to the Obama-era policy.
It is interesting, though, with all the, rightfully Democratic anger over Vladimir Putin in the 2016 election. Gabbard and Sanders' foreign policies are Putin dreams. I mean, objectively, in terms of their Syria policy, the idea that NATO causes more problems than Russia does, that kind of stuff. So that it's going to be interesting to see what constituency there is for that.
Tom, if those administrations arm Ukraine, right?
Right.
No, they wouldn't. Obama didn't even give these people
missiles. So it is a challenge. I mean, one of the opportunities here, which we're going to see more, Iran, most likely, North Korea potentially, Chinese maybe in the South China. One of these issues is going to blow up at least for a week, in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
So it's going to get on the platform, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's fair to say that Senator Sanders is pretty far outside of the mainstream of most of the Democrats on that stage. And so if you're creating lanes and putting people in them, I think you're going to have much more of those 10 to 12 people on the stage fall within the Biden camp with some smaller disagreements here or there than you do people who are going to say they outwardly agree with the foreign policy of Bernie Sanders.
It's still lonely to be an anti-interventionist, no doubt about it.
I've watched his speeches from 30, 40 years ago. He's been saying the same stuff about Israel and about foreign intervention and military aid since the very beginning. So he has been consistent, I will say that.
Absolutely.
You guys sit tight.
Gentlemen,
We're
stick
going
with
to
us.
take a quick break.